ladies and gentlemen, I am back. Joined right now by Brandon Howard of CBS Sports. Brandon, thank you for joining me.
Oh, you're very welcome, man. Thank you so much for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, and first I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you look like a '90s rap album cover right now.
This guy.
You looking real suave debonair right now. I would say myself, sir.
Hey, man, I appreciate it.
You got the glasses working, you got the taco meat out, the chains, the layers,
Hey, let
right?
me live, bro. Let me live.
Hey, listen. I'm jealous. I'm just trying to be like you when I grow up. That's all. I'm trying to be I'm trying to be the man that you are every single day. Every single day, I'm trying to be the guy that just shows up looking like an absolute G. An absolute G. It really is a pleasure. It's a
I
pleasure.
give it my
It's a pleasure
best,
to watch
man.
you work.
I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to watch you work. I don't have you for long, but I've got you up until the start of the hour. And I don't want to
All
waste our
good.
time.
For sure.
Um, it's an interesting draft, right? It's an interesting draft
Absolutely.
in the sense of there's a lot of talent in a lot of places, and a at quarterback, at wide receiver, at offensive line, I think there is an abundance of talent on the offensive side.
For
Quarterback,
sure.
wide receiver, offensive line. You played receiver, a little running back, but you're in our world. You played a little receiver.
Yeah.
I played receiver. I want to talk about the receivers, but I don't want to talk about Malik Neighbors. I don't want to talk about um, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't even want to talk about Rome Odunze or any of those guys that we think are going to go in the first round. I want you to give me some day two guys, some guys that we should be looking for on day two that are going to be instrumental, on a team come next year. Some guys that could have been first round picks if it wasn't one of the deepest drafts we've seen at the position that are
Absolutely.
probably going to fall to day two. Who are some guys that you're looking at?
Man, I'm gonna give you my number one guy that I absolutely love, and it's just really, really hard to watch film on him and just like pick out a flaw. It's like it's almost unfair. It's like you're nitpicking at this point. And that guy for me is Jermaine Burton. Big fan of his, man. The way he just attacks the ball when it's in the air, and also his route running ability. I'm a huge fan of the way he gets in and out of his breaks, and I just think he has. I know what his 40 time was, but I think he's more explosive than even what his 40 time would indicate. His game film speaks for itself. His game speed is there, and that's a guy, as far as like being a split end, that I think can even pretty much be a day one contributor if given the opportunity to. And I think that he's not given his just due in this draft class the way that he should.
What is it just as simple as there's so many people, like there's so many guys, like is that a guy, is that why we're not looking at him the same way? I feel like that's the case with the quarterback. It's like it's so many guys that
Yeah,
all of these guys can't go in the first round, right?
absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
if you had to pick a guy, and I'm putting you on the spot here, if you had to pick a guy that you think he will be better than out the gate, who's the guy?
I would say people are gonna kill me for this, bro.
Oh,
They're gonna
here we go.
kill
Because
me for
I
this.
think I know the name.
Marvin Harrison Jr. I,
That's what I thought you were going to
I,
say.
I think right out the gate, just because of his, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is savvy. Do not get me wrong, but I think because of his ability to get off press, his releases, the way he's just able to kind of, read the leverage, in the secondary. I think that this guy has an opportunity to contribute right away, and I think people are going to be blown away by his IQ, what he's able to do out there. Like I really think he's going to be one of those guys that people are going to be talking about and saying, "Oh, well, we never saw this coming." A lot of people did, and I really think that he has an opportunity to be good very early.
I think that a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. has a chance to struggle as a rookie right? I
Sure.
think he has a chance to struggle as a rookie, but I also think he may have the highest ceiling of
Absolutely.
anybody out here,
Absolutely.
right? Like at
Absolutely.
his best, he could be one of those guys that we all talk about as a walk right into the Hall of Fame kind of guy at the peak of what his powers could be.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's just a simple, just plug him in right now and all of a sudden, he's a 1,200, 1,300 yard receiver. He's a 100 catch receiver. I don't think it's just that. It's just that simple. And
it's not plug and play. It's not plug and play.
And the one thing I don't think gets enough talk, right? Why don't we ever see him running away from people? Like, why don't we ever see him on a consistent basis catch like a slant and just take off on some people, right?
Like Xavier Leggett. We don't see that. We don't see, what we saw in Xavier Leggett from Harrison Jr. And, say what you will, but, if you have great speed, you want to show that off, right? Why give, I understand why he didn't run the 40, but if you are that guy, you're going to run that 40.
Absolutely.
So, because that's just the way a lot of sprinters think. That's the way people that are fast think. I'm going to show you what I can do and elevate my stock that much more.
It's a competitive nature, right? Like it's the competitive nature says, I want to compete and I want to show everybody that I'm the man. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. feels too curated to me, right? It feels almost as if he has a Hall of Fame father who's been through the game, understands how you can get pigeonholed or you can get. So I'm not criticizing. This isn't criticism for him not doing it, right? I think it's savvy. It's savvy business from a business standpoint.
I'm not killing him for that at all.
Absolutely. But the competitor in me is going, like if I was if I'm one of the top guys who ran the 40, I'm going, he was scared of the smoke. Right? That's what I'm doing. That's where my mind, that's as a competitor, I'm going, he's afraid of the smoke. He don't want it. He's not really about this the way he claims to be about this, right?
Or the way that people think that.
You know what? That's a better one.
Yeah.
The way that others think. I had a conversation. I was having a conversation with a guy in the Giant space, and shout out to the entertainer if he's watching or listening. Riptide Media, by the way, if you don't know, check it out. He's being put as a generational prospect. He's being put on the same level as Julio Jones.
Right.
Like on the same level as Randy Moss, on the same level as Larry Fitzgerald. Guys who were legitimate, I'm going to walk into the league and I'm going to kill it immediately. Right. Like, if his name was Michael Haverson Jr., do you think he's still this high up? Or do you think he'd be being talked about in the same light as the rest of all of these really good prospects?
Right. And I think that he'd be in the mix. He'd be where about Adonai Mitchell, guys like that. He'd be in that territory. I don't think we'd be talking about, he's a statue builder, type of guy. Or when it's all said and done, we're going to build statues of him. And that may be true in the end. We see the potential, but will that all come to fruition when it's all said and done? And there's some question marks there. There's some things about his game that need to be fleshed out. And I think, and I would bet that they will be, but I think it's just going to take a little bit of time, and it's not going to be the immediate impact that a lot of people think.
So tell me, Brandon, what are you working on right now over at CBS? What are you guys doing?
So right now we're putting together draft prospects by position right now for fantasy football and dynasty, just trying to see, where they should be taken in the draft. So we're just doing some rankings at the moment, and then just doing some scouting reports as well. So that's pretty much the long and short of what it is right now, just getting prepared for the draft.
Now, when you were working for the Athletic, you were doing pieces where you really got an opportunity to take a look in inside of the game,
Right.
right? Like I don't just want to tell you, oh, this is what from a from a micro standpoint. I want to be able to give you the ins and outs of why, right? The why. So many times in fantasy, we're missing the why. What's the one thing for a guy like Rome Odunze? What's the one thing for a guy like Malik Neighbors, for Marvin Harrison, for the top guys that you're looking at in fantasy and you say, oh, they're going to make a difference right now?
I would just say, number one, it's the mindset. Do they have that? And then you're not going to know that until you see the demeanor and how they're interacting with teammates and things of that sort. When I used to be on a beat, that's the thing that I would look for. Do they have the type of mentality that's going to lend itself to being that type of guy when it's all said and done, or being able to contribute rather early on. Secondly is their habits, and what do they do? And also, do they have the type of player that's going to bring them along? A lot of guys are, when they go into a position room, they don't have the type of player that's going to bring them along because, hey, I got a family too, and it's a dog eat dog world, right? I'm trying to make sure my family eats, and I'm going to make sure I stay at the forefront of everything. And it's not going to be this rookie coming along and taking my job. But sometimes you get a veteran that will kind of help you along. And you see that, remember with Randy Moss and Chris Carter, what he did, took them under his wing. Is that the type of locker room where a guy is going to come in and the veterans are going to take him under his wing? Another thing that I look for is just, how do they digest the playbook? And those are the things that are going to, you get the reports, as they go along here. And when they get into OTAs and rookie OTAs and all of that stuff, how well they're doing. Are they ahead of schedule? Where are they? And those are the things you kind of take into account as you're accounting for or as you're predicting how they're going to be in fantasy, and so those are things you look for early on, and then you start to look for, are these traits, all these traits that you saw in college and you like them, are those same things translating to the next level? And when they can play freely and all the things you saw in college start to transfer over early on, that is a good sign that you're going to see some of the things that you saw in college at the next level. And I'm thinking that a guy like Jermaine Burton is going to have a great year.
I look at things like contested catches, right?
Yeah.
If you're making contested catches at the collegiate level, that is a transferable skill.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you're making contested catches at the collegiate level, then there's a good chance that you're going to be able to make contested catches in the league. It's
sure.
Not like these DBs are all of a sudden, they just got longer arms.
They all came from the same place.
Absolutely. They all came from the same place. And I also believe that dominance always comes back, right? I liken this to Jalen Brunson, right? With the Knicks. Jalen Brunson wasn't a high draft pick because people thought he was already at his ceiling, that he wasn't going to be better as a pro. And my argument was always, well, he's killing all of these dudes that you say are going to be pros. So what's going to change when he's always going to be where he is,
the NBA is funny like that. I don't understand it, but yeah.
But the NFL has adopted a lot of that mentality.
You're right.
With players and their development. They're looking for what that guy's going to be rather than looking at what he is right now. And so I don't particularly care what you think he's going to be in 5 years if I'm a GM or a head coach, because I'm likely to not have a job in the NFL. It's called not for long. It's not just for the players.
Right.
It's for the coaches and the GMs as well.
Coaches in front offices too. Yeah.
So as a fantasy manager, if I'm looking at a rookie, if I'm looking at a rookie that I want to bring going in a dynasty format, I'm looking for guys who can hit the ground running right now. Guys who I can say, well, you know what, if he's in the right situation, or if he's in a stable situation, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the right situation. If he's in a stable situation, he's going to be able to produce. It might actually be better for some of these guys that these teams that are drafting high already have a quarterback that they have in place. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
As a like if one of these wide receivers goes to Arizona without really understanding what their offense is going to look like next year, just having a veteran quarterback who understands the game and knows how to get the ball to talent should definitely help them, as they continue to move forward. Is that kind of what you're looking at? Like, hey, depending upon one of these 5 or 6 receivers, people are saying anywhere between 7 might go, 6 to 7 might go in the first round.
First round, right.
Is it going to be, oh, well, he landed with this team, he's probably going to have the best season?
That's a great point also. And that's kind of one of the things I missed is that when you're looking at where these guys land, are they landing in great situations? Are they landing in positions where a coach will adopt to the skill set? Or will they try to force a square peg in a round hole type situation? So, and also, does this coach have a track record of adjusting to the players that he has at his disposal? So those are things I'm definitely looking for. Is the landing spot and also the quarterback wide receiver pairing. What does the receiver do well versus what does the quarterback do well? And sometimes those things don't mesh. So that's another thing to definitely take a look at.
Who's the smoothest receiver in this draft?
Smoothest? Man, that's a tough one. But I'm going to go with probably Rome Odunze. I really think Rome Odunze is one of the smoother receivers in this class.
Who is the most physical receiver in this draft? Not the biggest, but the most physical.
The biggest. I'm going to go with Malachi Corley. I think he's one of the more physical guys in this class, and I think it really shows up in his after-the-catch ability. You want to see that translate into him getting to his spots in his route running as well. But at the same time, I really think that he's one of the more physical guys out there.
Who's the receiver with all the tools in the toolbox?
I think we've discussed them ad nauseum. I think Jermaine Burton is one. That's one of the guys that I really like. But I think people are really sleep on McCaffrey. I really think this kid has potential. And I think a lot of people aren't really giving him his due because, he's the younger brother of somebody who's already doing well. But I think he has potential.
Is it just as simple as we just don't believe in him because he's a white wide receiver?
I think
does it come down to that? Let's keep it a buck, right?
He's a changed position guy. He was a quarterback at one point. Now but I think that's really what's kind of helped him as well.
You think being a white receiver is actually giving him a little bit more notice?
No, I'm saying I think that him being a former quarterback.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is really what helped him because you understand what the quarterback is looking at. So I think that he knows where to settle in. I think that he's got an opportunity to really do some good things if he gets in the right spot there.
Who is the Puka Nacua of this draft class? The guy who nobody's talking about outside, the guy who's going to go day 3, and then all of a sudden we're going to look up and go, the guy that's going to be the undrafted wide receiver in fantasy that ends up getting picked up and now he's out of here.
Man, I think and he's going to play inside. He's going to play in the slot, so he's not going to be one of the outside guys. But I think Malik Washington is a guy that I think people are going to really kind of be banging their head up against the wall, say, I should have given this guy more consideration because I think that he's quick as a hiccup. I think he has the ability to contribute on special teams, and he's also got more ability to play on outside than people think. So I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think people aren't really paying much attention to what he was able to do in college.
Brandon, I really do appreciate it. Got to get to a break now because
For sure.
we doing our thing around here. We trying to make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody out there, make sure that you follow Brandon and all his work on X or Twitter or whatever you call it at bhoward_81. Check out his work at CBS Sports. Brandon, I'm really looking forward to chopping it up with you about the draft as we get closer and kind of get behind all of this ridiculousness that we hear out here.
For sure.
And obviously I know you've got your two boys are still out there killing it. A big father figure to not only his son, but to any of those young guys that are out there looking for somebody to help mentor them in football and track. But watching your sons do their thing, it's really awesome for me, as the big unk to just kind of be there and throw them a couple of words of encouragement whenever I get an opportunity to. It really is a pleasure. And I appreciate you joining me.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it, man. Have me on anytime, man. I'm always available.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned because after the break, we're going to be talking to Matt Waldman of the RSP. Don't go anywhere. We will be back here shortly.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
And ladies and gentlemen, I am back, Coach Gene Clemens, joining you here as always. Talk Spicy. Thank you for hanging out. I am joined by a guy I met years ago, a guy that I was introduced to through, I believe it was through a good friend of mine, Emery Hunt, whom I seem to either introduce to a bunch of people or whom I get introduced to a bunch of people through. But in having a conversation with this gentleman, he just seemed like a really like quality individual, like a quality dude, and he was a sponge. He wanted to know. He wasn't coming in with any like, I know more than you, or I'm here to big boss you, or I'm here to kind of prove you wrong. A lot of the stuff that we see in the business now. But it was really just like, hey, let's talk. Let's talk some ball. Let's get the film out. Let's see what the film says, and let's look at things from the film's perspective and let the film talk. I always appreciate that, because that's how I get down with any medium that I'm on when it comes to sports and sports evaluation. I am joined by none other than the RSP's own Matt Waldman. Matt, thank you for joining me.
Hey, Coach, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. It's always fun for us to be able to, chop it up together. And I think it was Emory that introduced us, which was very cool. And, we've done some shows together, I know, on your platforms and mine. And I feel exactly the same way. It's just been fun for us to be able to have conversations and learn from one another.
Yeah, I think one of the first big things we did is we talked about Baker Mayfield, and I think at the time it spawned from probably a social media conversation that was going on, where I was one of them people that was like, I don't know about this Baker Mayfield you guys are saying is like all that, and you reached out and you said, hey, I'd love to be able to look at the film and give me and other people the understanding of why you feel that way. And we compared him versus, I believe it was Boykin, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about him versus Boykin, and what we thought Boykin actually did, or what I thought Boykin actually did better than Baker Mayfield, even though Baker Mayfield was this guy who was the Heisman Trophy winner and a guy who a lot of people thought was going to be a first round pick, and Boykin was a guy that nobody thought was going to be drafted. And it ended up playing out that way, right? Like It ended up playing out that way, but we saw skills that you could see were kind of lacking in what Baker was able to do as a quarterback, and it up and bit him. The exact stuff that we were talking about on the film came back and bit him as a pro, right? And I just remember sitting there having a conversation with you, because it wasn't on some, let me prove him wrong. It was really like we were both coming to the realization, oh, wow. Yeah. We found a market inequality. We found something that just didn't fit right.
One of the great lessons that I learned from Baker Mayfield and from watching Baker Mayfield, and when we watched him together, is that, people love to talk about the analytics of accuracy, and like you're going to hear about heat maps with Drake May. And one of the things that I've mentioned to people is that accuracy, like box score accuracy, is not necessarily, passing accuracy. And that unless you're, rigorously charting how a quarterback throws the ball, and whether it's pinpoint accuracy in a sense of projecting towards what the NFL is going to be looking for, and whether you're projecting, whether he made the decision in a timely manner, which is, the level of processing that you need, that the NFL in its infancy is just beginning to realize, but doesn't know how to apply. I've joked, Gene, since we've last talked, that NFL quarterbacking is a stage performance medium, and they see it still as a science, and they're trying to quantify everything, but they don't realize that really the elements that go into stage performance are very similar to the elements that go into quarterbacking, because you have scientific aspects, technical, conceptual, all physical things, athletic things, but you have to integrate all that. You got to deliver it with the speed of accuracy in a manner that, I joke that Alex Smith would be like the comedy writer who maybe he delivers great material, but somebody else needs to tell the joke and perform it, or else they need a laugh track for his stuff. Whereas, like, you could say Brett Favre, in contrast, maybe he did nothing but tell fart jokes, but you know, his would land because he had good timing. Like, he had the timing, and like all good comedians, you know, you're gonna bomb a lot. I mean, Dave Chappelle, Richard Pryor, Robin Williams, probably count up how many jokes they had that weren't funny on a special, and you'd realize that, you know, that's a tough gig. The amount they landed, though, had the gravity that made them superstars and Hall of Famers in what they do. And I think that that's kind of the same thing with quarterbacking. With Baker Mayfield, you could see against man coverage, he was always a beat or two late, even if he was box score accurate.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I like about the RSP, and congratulations, how many years is this now for the Rookie Scouting Portfolio?
For publication, it's been 19 now, and actually preparing for one, it's been 20. So that next year will be number 20.
Dang, well, that is a feat within itself. You obviously, I know how difficult it is to put something like that together. A lot of people might think that you do it for money, but it really is a labor of love. And if you happen to get a little dollars from it, then great. But, you know, it's probably something even before the 20 years that you've been doing it, that you probably had notes all around that rolled into a Rookie Scouting Portfolio. I remember talking to Emory about one of the reasons he started doing the draft guide is that he was like, well, I've always been doing a draft guide. I've just been doing it for me. And instead of having people always ask me the question of, oh, well, why do you have this person there, or what your thought is about this, I just decided I was going to, let people in on all of these notes that I've had for years. He had these notebooks just full of handwritten, evals that he had done on hundreds upon, thousands and now of players. And so to see him transition that into what it is now, and to see you continuing to, expand as the landscape is shifting, right underneath your feet. How has that been, trying to navigate how the landscape of how we consume this type of product?
It's been funny because, I started a little bit differently than Emory, because for me, I was a writer. And then before that, in the past life, I was an operations manager and a quality control director. And so I had learned all these process improvement methods for how do you evaluate performance, and got these certifications in industry best practices. And one day I was listening to Gil Brandt talk about Brian Westbrook and how if he were taller, a little heavier, he would be a top 5 overall pick rather than maybe a second round pick. And I thought about that, and I realized, I know the business of how this works, and like there's a business to it, and probably with more of an SH to it, like a business more than there is than just, there's some weird things that go on behind all that. So I knew that from the corporate experience that Brian Westbrook was a top 5 talent, but he didn't have all the bullet points that we're going to cover a team's assets, because what they're really looking for in a first round pick is ability to explain to the public and to the media and to anybody else that they're worried about that this guy was worth it. Because if they miss on an undersized, twice injured kid who had his scholarship revoked at Florida State due to injury before he ever got on there at Villanova, and he didn't pan out, and they've spent first round on him, they knew that wasn't going to fly, compared to if they spent first round on a kid who went to Stanford and had all the yardage, the physical prototypes, all of that. So, for me, it was about seeing if the process I had learned, I could apply it to studying football and continue to learn the game. And through that kind of helped me get in contact with coaches and scouts and analytics people with scouting backgrounds and playing backgrounds, and having conversations and it kind of growing from there. And then just, when you start your own businesses, it's kind of the Wild West. So you're always trying to learn things like video editing and doing that kind of work. Now you get into podcasting and for me, the RSP was always like, I knew I wasn't going to be any good at design. I was a journalist, but I wasn't going to try and do design. So I was like, I'm going to make this as basic as it can be. I want it to look like something you found in a file cabinet and then you read it. So what's changed for me probably is that I would say that it's been more than anything. One thing to stay the same, I will say first, is that just staying true to yourself and staying true to the work and what was your mission. It was like, I want to make this the best quality thing I can make it in terms about football and continue to learn about the game and apply that to what I'm doing. And my kind of audience will find that. And if they like it, they're going to stick around, because that's really what this is about. Is like, I'm not trying to get numbers to sell. If it's good enough, it'll come because those people will be raving fans. And that's kind of what's happened. But, I've had to grow in finding my audience and doing the social media stuff and doing that kind of work. And then really what's come to me through that is wide receiver coaches, who I've had on shows. And because you're doing stuff like that, they're like, hey, I've got Drew Lieberman, who's an assistant wide receiver coach at Rutgers, who's worked with guys like Edelman and Mohamed Sanu and Dontavian Wicks. I've learned a ton from them, and I've been able to apply that. All that's, you can see on behind me, there's a blackboard back here and half of it was actually the whole thing was covered in what ultimately was criteria I used. And I credit Drew Lieberman, him and Jay Norvell, for his book and spending time to revamp what I do. So really a lot of it's kind of cyclical. It kind of helps. And, one thing that you start doing to promote yourself, if your mission's the same, which is I'm trying to learn, then you encounter people who you go, this I can apply to my work. And then you credit those people. They want to come on your show. They want to do work with you. They want to keep doing, so it's a weird evolution in that sense. I mean, it's like I went from being basically a fantasy football hobbyist and a magazine writer with some management experience to being someone who's doing this and, getting a chance to work with some quarterback coaches and who've worked with Anthony Richardson and Brock Purdy and getting a chance to supply my scouting reports. I mean, and a lot of it's with getting the chance to work with folks like you along the way, where I get to learn from doing shows and, and we have an exchange of ideas and being able to it's all grist for the mill.
So one of the things that we learn in coaching, one of the things that we learn in football is there's nothing new under the sun. Everything is recycled, everything is stolen, everything is borrowed, whatever. And we repackage it. We put our own little, zest, our own little seasoning on it, but it's still, the same thing. Like I love this Inside Zone duo conversation. Like, to me, that's hilarious. Inside Zone, duo, split zone. I'm like, it's all just the same thing. Like, depending upon what the defense does in front of you, it's going to dictate how it looks, right? Isn't that the entire point of the concept? And so the fact that you've leaned into and you let it be known immediately, like, hey, none of this is stuff that I invented or I came up with. This is stuff that people who understand, who know the business, who know what they're looking at, have told me these are the things that you look for. Do you think that's why you've had so much success in this space, as opposed to a lot of other guys that may have come from your background, where it wasn't like I've been working in sports this entire time type of background, where they try to like get into the space and then act as an authority, and people are looking at them like, you don't really look like you know what you're talking about. Like, or, hey, how are you so sure? How do you talk in such absolutes, when it comes to these things? Do you think it's just been your openness about how you've obtained this information that's allowed you to grow?
I hope so. I think that's generally how I tried to look at it. And I think that if I brought anything different to the table, it was different from an NFL, from a football perspective, but not in a life perspective. It was just barring. It's just like you look at Patrick, and I'm not comparing myself to Patrick Mahomes. Before we even go there, but in a very small window, you look at Patrick Mahomes and people like it's not going to work. And if you look at him, you go, he's just playing. He's just taking what he learned as a shortstop and he's applying it to football. And he's got a good trainer who actually is reinforcing that he doesn't get hurt doing it, so that he's strong enough to continually do what he's doing. But I mean, we used to talk about quarterbacks as point guards when they started distributing the ball in a different manner. It's just borrowing from what you learned in life. So like I learned all the football stuff I learned from football people, for sure. The things that maybe in how I communicate it comes from being a writer. It came from being a performance musician. It came from working in corporate America. And so then I would have, because the people who were football people would contact me and say, listen, I'd had somebody who's a subscriber since 2007 who was a DB in Division I. He was a scout for 4 teams. He had gotten his degrees in masters in stats and biomechanics, and he worked for more than a dozen teams, in the NFL doing what he did in scouting analytics. And he said, he contacted me in 2011 and said, I've been getting your book since 2007. And I thought you worked in the league because of what you knew about behind the curtain that most NFL types writers say they do, but have no clue. And I was like, I just guessed, honestly. Like I was saying, and I would say when I would write, I would say, this is my estimation. I may be wrong. But this one, and he goes, no, he goes, I realized that you didn't work in corporate America. That you didn't work here. He said that you work in corporate America. And I said, that's where I got it. I was like, they put on organizational management is the same across all bounds, so where dysfunction is, if you've experienced the dysfunction, you're going to see it in the NFL. So my point being is I learned from a variety, and it's just, again, being open to that. You don't know everything. You're going to learn, you're going to fail, and you're going to take chances. I think the thing that Emory and I both have in common as both people who do draft guides is that we don't really care. We care about being right, but we care about being right from the standpoint of right about seeing the football player for who he is, not whether or not he gets drafted in the first round or whether or not he has a great career. I mean, that's nice and it's icing on the cake, and it's what gets you some props from people and people to want to maybe buy your work. But I think more than anything, it's about, did we see that player truthfully? Did we see him accurately? And are we learning something from that? And do we follow our true north for our compass? Because I had somebody who is high in this industry, and I'm not going to say who, but somebody I worked with at one time who was like, who I have a lot of respect for what they do, but they were like, it's not about being right. It's not about being right. It's about being entertaining. And I thought, nope, that's not my true north. That's theirs. And that's okay in what they want to do. I hopefully can be entertaining, but more than anything, I want to try and be right from the standpoint of learning the game and learning what I do. And I think that just shines through with how you go about doing it. Just like I think that one of the things that shined through with you over the years is that you've always been a truth teller, and you've always not been afraid to just be forthright about what you think. And you're not trying to be conflict oriented with it. You're just trying to tell people what you think and how it is. And you're more than willing to listen to somebody tell you what they think it is and how it is. And then you just go about your day, which is like, you're just real, and I think people recognize real, and most people appreciate it, though sometimes people don't. And those are, some folks who don't appreciate the real, they come at you, but that's okay. That's just a validation for really where you're trying to head.
I appreciate that love. I receive it. I'm trying to get better about receiving praise. I know it's weird because I consider myself to be an extremely confident person, but I don't receive praise well. And I think a lot of us don't actually. I think it's a natural thing that a lot of us find it difficult to receive praise because we don't look at anything that we're doing as revolutionary. We just look at it as, okay, well, this is just kind of how it is, But the one thing I do remember, I heard someone say, and I don't know if they were just being nice or whatever, but they said that I was everyone's favorite follow on Twitter's favorite follow.
Yeah.
Because my following's not, I'm not out here with 20 and 40,000 followers or 100,000 followers, but my, whatever it is right now, 1,000 plus, almost 2,000 followers, they're all people that are in the industry. I don't like the people who I engage with. They're usually people who are in the industry, whether they like me or not. We hang out, we talk. But I've always been good with the back and forth with the conversation that could sometimes sound or be read or teeter on argument. And I think that argument gets a bad rep because of the connotation of what we see when we think of an argument. But what we're really just talking about is someone's point, right?
Yep.
Like that's basic.
That's how you learn.
Exactly. So, if you can't give me a strong argument, then why should I listen to it, right? And so if you don't have any passion behind your argument, why should I listen to it? If you don't have any logic behind your argument, why should I listen to it? If there are not other people who can corroborate or share your argument, then why should I listen to it? It's your basic ethos, pathos, logos in writing and in the art of rhetorical.
Yeah. I'll give you a great example. You and I had the last time we had an argument online, and it was about Trey Lance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And what we learned from that conversation, what I learned was that you are more invested in the kid and the person in terms of where they're going. And it's understandable. You're a coach, you have an investment and you want to see for me, like I care about the person on an abstract level of like, I don't want to see anything go bad for them, but I'm thinking more from the standpoint of like, what could this kid do or not do? And what do they bring to the table and what they have if things work out in their favor? And it's a little drier. And what I think that one of the things that I learned is that for you, it was more like, okay, yeah, but the way the system's set up and the way that these kids get blown up on media doing stuff on Twitter like I do, or like Emory does, or somebody else, it puts these kids at risk maybe a little too early. And it can be damaging to them early on in terms of the outcome of where their career is. Now, we're still rooting for Trey Lance in Dallas, and hopefully things work out for him long term. But if we were to say, what you were worried about, I think was absolutely on point. Because, even if you look at Shanahan and say, well, maybe there was a disconnect between GM and coach about who they really wanted, and whether coach wanted to give that a chance or not with Trey Lance, and whether he got a full chance or whether he was just not quite ready yet with the lack of playing time, to your point, and on top of it, what that might have done to him psychically a little bit. It may not be permanent, but it is certainly something that's forced him to sit and go, okay, there needs to be time for him behind the scenes for a while, because he didn't have much playing time at North Dakota State in terms of like what you normally see.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I like about what you do is that you don't try to stay heavy in waters that you don't feel comfortable swimming in, right?
Yeah.
Like it. Listen, we talk. We don't talk a lot of lineman play
Nope.
when I'm talking with you because that's not your passion. That's not your love language. You appreciate the position. You'll talk about the position if someone wants to talk about it, but that's not where the focus is, right?
No, that's not. I spent enough time on those four
Yep.
that I know, and the way that I wanted to spend time on it, I knew that the others aren't my lane. Maybe when I retire from everything, maybe I'll get into that, and then I can tell someone, well, I'm working on that. In 5 years, I can talk to you about that, like I was able to talk about receivers 15 years ago, something like that.
So, tell people where they can pick up or subscribe to the RSP, and where they can follow you and everything that you're doing. And by the way, I've loved how you're using TikTok. I love how you're using it. I've watched you get more into that, into that atmosphere of the short form, video, using it as a quick eval on people. I really do like what you're doing. It reminds me of what I was doing back in the Vine days when I was doing the quick little 15-second pop-ups on the Vine. I like what you're doing. I wanted to let you know that because
appreciate it.
I think that people, when they're venturing into new lanes, into new mediums, that they need to know that what they're doing is actually having the effect that they're hoping that it's having. So tell everybody where they can find your stuff before I start giving you more props and all that.
MattWaldman.com is where you can get the rookie scouting portfolio. It's a pre-draft, post-draft publication. It's 1,183 pages in length on these four positions. It's in a PDF format. It's all bookmarked. So think of it as like a choose your own adventure. If you want to see scouting reports, you can check that out. If you want to see just rankings, you can check that out. If you want to see my process for how I get into all this, including the glossary of terms and all that, that's in there too. The post drafts more for fantasy people. I'm also a senior staff writer, football guys. I've been writing about fantasy football since 2003. So I give you a post draft version. So that way it doesn't cloud how I view my pre-draft. So if I think Dillon Johnson is a top 5 talent as a running back in terms of what he has to offer, if the landing spot's good, I'm not going to say I'm putting him at 20 because it's most likely based on the tea leaves of the NFL that he's not going to get drafted and he's going to have to work his way up. No, I want you to know, I think this guy's number 5. So then after the draft, then I can say, okay, here's the pragmatic view for all you fantasy people out there of how that works. So you can get that there. My YouTube channel is Matt Waldman's RSP Film Room, where you'll find podcasts, long-term form and short-term form videos on how I scout these 4 positions.
And I appreciate you as always. Appreciate you coming on. Look forward to talking more as we get closer to the draft and we start to tune out all of the BS that we hear about. People. I'd love to have you back on. And I might reach out to get you back on next week because I want to have a talk about the idea of this media scouting and people ranking players based off of where they think they're going to go instead of ranking them based off of where they believe they are talent.
Yes,
as a talent.
Yes, because evaluation and valuation are 2 different things, and I don't think the analytics folks really fully understand that, and the ones that do are tired of trying to explain it to them.
Well, I knew that it would be a great topic for you because of your background in the business world and understanding the difference between the two, but I just don't have enough time to flesh it all out right now. But definitely, once again, Matt Waldman, the RSP, follow him on X at Matt Waldman. That's 2 T's on Waldman, and check him out. Give him a follow. Go in and check out the rookie scouting portfolio. Subscribe to that. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Everything he does is above board. He wants you to know where it comes from. He wants you to know the why. And that's what we're all about. Coming up next, I'm going to get a chance to talk about what I wanted to talk about in the first half hour that got all discombobulated because everything was on rolling a little bit kind of funny with Caitlin Clark and the WNBA. We'll get back into that when I come back. This is Talk Spicy, brought to you by Riptide Media Network. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Stay tuned.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have anybody to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. I know you won't, because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Talk Spicy, brought to you by Riptide Media Network. Make sure that you're checking us out. Download the Sports Radio 102.9 app, 102.9 The Game app. Thank you for joining me. We'll be here every day from 4 to 6 p.m., keeping it spicy. I just want to apologize once again for the beginning, the first 30 minutes of the show. We had some audio issues that I didn't want to kill the stream. So some of you guys who hung around, some of you who didn't hang around, some of you who are wondering while I'm still on, while I've been on for an hour and 32 minutes, we will be with you Monday through Friday. And by we, I mean I will be with you Monday through Friday from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock on all the places that you find me, on all the social media places before, everywhere that you like, on the YouTube channel, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Twitch. Excuse me. My brain was just going a little bit crazy. But you will also find us Riptide Media Network and on Sports Radio 102.9, The Game app, and coming soon, the Riptide Media Network app, and everywhere that it might get picked up, syndicated. So if you are looking for a little something in that 4 to 6 range, or if you just want to run it at another time, definitely you want to check us out here at Riptide Media. I was listening to I was watching the lead up to the WNBA draft, and we all know that Caitlin Clark is going to be the number 1 overall pick. But it got me thinking, is Caitlin Clark a transformational talent? Like, we know that Caitlin Clark is a generational talent, right? We know that she has skills beyond what many others that played the game have. Her range, her ball handling, her court vision, her ability to rebound. I wouldn't say her ability to play defense, but you got to lap somewhere. But is she a transformational talent? When she goes to the WNBA and she goes to Indiana, is she going to be what elevates Indiana to a championship caliber team? That is the question, right? When we think about talent, especially in basketball now, we think about the talent individually and what they're going to be able to do as an individual. Like, I think what we should do is we should look at the gravity or the magnetism of the athlete and how that goes into their play. It's really interesting to me that that the way we've seen the WNBA go, right? That Caitlin Clark, regardless of the team, would have most likely been the number 1 overall pick. But if we look at what's winning championships, it's not the 3, right? It's not the 3. If we look at what's winning championships, it's probably not even the point guard. What's winning championships in the WNBA are the ultra talented 4 and 5 positions. The 4 and 5 positions, the dominant, down low, you can't stop me post player that has a bunch of good to great players around her, or the 4, I'm big enough to guard a 5, I'm athletic enough to guard a wing, I can shoot from the outside, I can put my back to the basket type of player. Those are the players that are winning championships. Don't believe me? Look at the championships. Like, do yourself a favor and just go and type in WNBA champions by year. And if you go to WNBA champions by year, right? And we look at the last, look at the last, you know what? Let's go all the way back to 1997. 1997, the Houston Comets. Everybody's going to say, oh, well, yeah, that was the point guard. No, it wasn't. Like, if we look at who was, like for everything we want to say about Cheryl Swoops and Cynthia Cooper, who was the person that really made that thing go, right? It was Tina Thompson. The 4 who could shoot from deep, but also put their backs. She was the cheat code. She was the cheat code to that Houston Commons 4-peat, right? The Los Angeles Sparks, we all know, is the big man, right? Or the big woman. The 5, Lisa Leslie. The Detroit Shock. Like, that team that was built, they were built on bigs. The Seattle Storm, right? They were built on bigs. The Sacramento Monarchs, built on bigs. Shock again, Mercury, Detroit Shock. Let's get over into more recent times, right? We get to the Phoenix Mercury, who you might have an argument in 2014, right? Minnesota Lynx, Sparks. Who's on the Sparks? You know it, right? Like we talk about these things as if we're surprised when we bring them up. The last 4, 5, 6, 2018, right? Who's the dominant player on Seattle? Is it the point guard who we all know and love and think that she's an all-time great, or is it the power forward who can shoot threes and dribble and put her back to the basket? Like, who was the most important piece to make that thing go? Because before she showed up, the Storm were not winning championships since the last time they had a big who had dynamics. 2019, Della Dawn. 2020, Storm again. 2021, Chicago Sky. Who's there? You guessed it, right? Las Vegas Aces, back-to-back. Who's there? The best player in the WNBA, A'ja Wilson. As good as Caitlin Clark is, as good as she's going to be, because she's going to get buckets, right? When you hear somebody like Diana Taurasi say, oh, well, she has a wake-up call coming, right? When you hear Taurasi say something like, oh, well, she better get ready, what sounds like hate may, in fact, not be hate at all. What sounds like hate may actually be a warning. Hey, yo, you're going to have to play on the offense and defensive side. Hey, yo, you're not going to be able to put up 30 shots a game, 20-something shots a game. Why? Because you've got other really good players on your team. You're going to have to be more efficient. Your game is going to have to evolve. Is Caitlin Clark going to be Breanna Stewart? A transformational piece, right? Is Caitlin Clark going to be A'ja Wilson? A transformational piece. Like, she shows up and we all of a sudden start getting to championships. Like, is that what's going to happen? Is that what we can expect from Caitlin Clark? And my answer is, I don't know. Right? My answer is, I don't know. And how could anybody say they know? Right? If we're being honest, next year, will Caitlin Clark have more impact on making her team good than Camila Cardoso will? Because when you plug in a 6'7" big who has a soft touch around the basket, knows how to put the ball in the cup, is unselfish, is used to playing on a team full of good players, who doesn't have to be the focal point in order to be good. When you do that, if Camila Cardoso goes to a team where she has the opportunity to be upon a part of a collective, as opposed to just the sun, if she's a part of the solar system instead of being the sun, there's a chance that she might have more success in her first season than Caitlin Clark does. Now, it won't be on the stat book, right? It won't be in the stat book, but it's never going to be in the stat book. It's never going to be in the stat book. If you look at players who have come into the league, and what they've been able to do, right? Sabrina Ionescu came in with as much fanfare, with as much boost as anybody has come into the WNBA And she got there and realized, oh, wow, I'm going to need to work on my game. This was a woman who was running roughshod through the entire women's college basketball landscape. This is a woman that if there was a more pronounced NIL when she was there, would have had a Nike deal, right? Would have been wearing Kobe's as a junior. Right? That's how big she was. Kelsey Plum was a killer in college, is extremely good in the WNBA, but it took her a minute. She had to figure out her role. And when I thought she would go into the WNBA and immediately elevate a team, she went in and nothing really changed. Why? It's simple. It's because they don't move the needle like that. Not on the court. Not if there's not already a big in place. Now, here's what's going to help Caitlin Clark. If Caitlin Clark comes to Indiana with an improved Aaliyah Boston, right? If Caitlin Clark shows up and Aaliyah Boston is even better than she was as a rookie, then okay, now we're talking. Now we're cooking, right? Because now we've got a 1-2 inside-outside punch. But if she comes to Indiana and Aaliyah Boston hasn't taken the next step yet, then they're going to still be struggling to beat these teams who are really, really good. Right? Because Aaliyah Boston is still young. And for as good as she was at South Carolina, she's not A'ja Wilson. For as good as she was at South Carolina, Aaliyah Boston is not A'ja Wilson. Aaliyah Boston is not Breanna Stewart. Right? Aaliyah Boston is not she is not your plug her in immediately, everything changes, because if she was, it would have changed last year. If she was, it would have been that last year. But this is not a diss. It's not saying that this can't happen. It's not saying that she can't get better. It's not saying that she can't eventually be that. It's just saying that she wasn't that out the gate. And so for Caitlin Clark, we have to believe the same things. She might come into the league and average damn near triple-double, right? She might walk into the league and average 20 and 10 and 8. What's the record? If she comes in and averages 20 and 10 and 8, what's the record? What are we looking at record-wise? What are we saying that Indiana is if she comes in and she averages 20, 10, and 8? I'm going to tell you, if she comes in and she averages 25, 10, and 8, if she comes in and averages 27, 10, and 8, if the record doesn't get them to the playoffs in a position to be competitive, I don't care. The same way that I don't give a damn about Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio putting up all those empty calorie points. I think it's hilarious, by the way, that everybody's out here applauding Victor Wembanyama for putting together these empty calorie points and saying that he is the runaway rookie of the year. And Chet Holmgren is over here on the number 1 seed in the West. Not in the East. Right? Not in the East. No offense against the East. But we ain't talking about the East. We're talking about the West. And Chet Holmgren, his 16.5 points his 7.9 rebounds, his 2.4 assists, his 2.3 blocks in less than 30 minutes a game on a team that is one of the best teams in all of the NBA, right? That's not considered better than Victor Wembanyama's 21 points and 10 rebounds and 3.9 assists and 3.6 blocks on one of the worst teams in all of basketball? See? He's a generational talent. But when does the transformation happen? Don't tell me he's out there playing with nobodies. I guarantee you right now, if you put some of those players that are on the Spurs on some other teams that are good, that they ball out. Victor Wembanyama is going to have to do what Anthony Davis had to do. He's going to have to prove that he can be that guy. He's going to have to prove that he can be the one that changes everything for everybody, right? He's going to have to prove that, because if he doesn't prove that, if he doesn't prove that he can be the man, if he doesn't prove that he can elevate an entire organization, if he doesn't prove that he can do what Giannis did, then what are we talking about? What are we celebrating? Why are we celebrating? Why should we care? Why should we care? Caitlin Clark will find herself in that situation. The first year, it doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter what the team does. Everybody's going to give her props. Oh my gosh, look at her. Look at what she's able to do. Look at how good she is. Look at how many points she scores, right? That's going to be the thing. And then somewhere down the line, somebody is going to say, all right, well, now we need her to win. And then when she doesn't win, the blame game is going to start. Everybody else is going to get the blame. Everybody else is going to have to eat the blame. Everybody else is going to have to deal with the blame. If she doesn't start winning, people are going to get traded. If she doesn't start winning, people are going to get replaced. Coaches are going to lose their job if she doesn't start winning. And I don't mean just getting to the playoffs. I mean winning championships, because you have a generational talent, right? You have a generational talent. But does she transform anything? Eventually, she's going to ask for a trade, because now she believes in her head what everybody else is saying. Oh, well, she needs help. Not that she is the help, but that she needs help. You know what I love about LeBron, right? Everybody claims that he needed help without realizing that he was always the help. When he went with Wade and Bosh, if you put Wade, Bosh, and any other player together, they don't win championships. They don't go to 4 straight finals. At that time, they went out and got the help. Wade and Bosh were getting together regardless. It was already a done deal. We're getting together regardless. We're waiting on Bron. Bron says, hey, I'm taking my talents to South Beach. Championships. When he comes back to Cleveland, they've got Kyrie. Kyrie needs help. They've got Kevin Love. Kyrie and Kevin Love needs help. What do? They bring in the help. LeBron. And now everybody's better. Now we're going to go to 4 straight championships. And if LeBron isn't there, they don't go to 4 straight championships. They don't win one. LeBron goes to LA. And in LA, he's there. And everybody says LeBron needs help. So they go out and get AD. Well, AD didn't help LeBron because AD's game doesn't actually match with LeBron's game. Their games are kind of similar. They kind of want to do the same stuff. AD would like to have the ball in his hand a lot more than he has the ball in his hand, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just here to let you know. Right? You don't have to kill the messenger. If AD had the chance to have the ball in his hand, he'd want the ball in his hand more. And so it's salute to Caitlin Clark. I'm anxious to see what she's going to do, but it's not going to be easy. And nobody's going to give her anything. That's the way it should be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Talk Spicy. We do this thing every day, 4 to 6 p.m. Make sure that you holler at us, right? Brought to you by Riptide Media Network. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. Make sure that you download the Sports Radio 102.9 The Game app. Stay tuned. The Bleacher Brothers are coming up at the top of the hour. My guy JT and them. Make sure you check them out. Don't go anywhere. They're coming up next. Till next time. Peace.